Cingari here with Invicta FC bantamweight champion Tonya Triple Threat Evinger. Tonya has a big fight coming up against Colleen Schneider at Invicta FC 17 on May 17th. How are you today, Tonya?
I'm good. I just got done training and feeling great and ready to go.
Always working hard, girl. Always working hard. How is training camp coming along then?
It's good. You know, I think this is the first training camp where I've actually got a decent training camp, and I focused a lot on my diet and being as healthy as I can and getting my weight down more naturally and stuff. And obviously I've opened my mouth a little bit and talked about going to 25 and trying to take that title too. So I think that I need to be realistic about it and hit my diet hard and lean up a little bit and go from there.
Good for you. I like that idea. 125 would be good for you. I think we would all like to see you fight that weight as well. How do you think you match up stylistically with Schneider?
You know, I've fought Taekwondo girls and stuff. I think that I just think that my style doesn't match up with anybody's style. I think that my style is really dominant, and I think that people haven't really figured out how to beat that yet. I always go back and to say, like, I feel like I'm fighting like the dudes are fighting. Like, I feel like my game is advanced to the level of what these high level guys are fighting, and I'm still fighting girls that are coming up and making a name for themselves in 3 or 4 years, you know. So obviously I think that the experience and what I see in the fight is completely different than what these girls that I'm fighting sees, you know. So I think that stylistically, I just think that I'm a little bit more dominant than everybody right now.
Yeah, you have I think your last 8 fights. You're on an 8-fight winning streak, as I recall. So that's kind of interesting. You mentioned the experience level, because do you feel like having the 8-fight win streak and the experience gives you not only an advantage physically, but I feel like maybe it might also give you an advantage mentally?
Yeah, you know, I don't know about the mental part. I think that it's every fight to me is as stressful as, you know, when I first started, you know, and I think that if any of them girls out there aren't feeling that stress or feeling them nerves, I think that they're definitely not prepared for what they're getting into, especially with me. I think that some of these girls come in so mentally ready, they think, and they feel like they got my game figured out, and they feel like they're just ready to take on the world, and they're ready to go to UFC, and they're ready to do all these big things and take my title from me. And I just, it's like a rude awakening for a lot of them. You know, I think that they're just not realistic yet. They're not realistic about what's really going on. And obviously I've dealt with this my whole life, you know, just people underestimating me as an athlete and my style in general, because I'm not dominating in any one style. I'm an actual MMA fighter. I'm actually a real MMA fighter. You know, nothing about my game is more dominant. You can't guarantee that I'm going to take you down. You can't guarantee that I'm going to stand up with you. Every fight to me is different, and I can train a certain way, but I don't train to fight somebody. I train to better myself, and then when I get in a fight, I just rely on the fact that I know what I'm doing, and I can adapt to the situation and do what I need to do to make that fight and turn into my favor, you know. So,
you know, we've talked about this before in interviews, you've discussed it as elsewhere in the media. Do you feel that when people underestimate you, it actually motivates you more to prove them wrong, I would think?
I think that just takes a little pressure off my shoulders. You know, I at the end of the day, I look at it and I'm like, well, I ain't got nothing to lose. Everybody already thinks they're going to whoop my ass, and everybody already thinks they got me figured out. So, I mean, what do I have to lose here? I just go in. I'm not as nervous and not as freaked out, and I just go in and I fight. And, you know, that works out for me. So I just stick to that.
Let's talk about your last fight and your big win against Pannie Kianzad. Can you break that fight down for us?
Yeah, you know, I think it's just an example of what I was talking about earlier. A girl a little too big for her britches and coming in to fight me, and you know, she wins one fight over here in the United States, and obviously it was against another girl from outside the United States, and like I always say, the competition is here in the States. So if you aren't winning here in the States, you ain't winning. So you know, she came over here undefeated, and she had a big head, and her coaches and everyone around her had put in her mind that she's the next world champ, and she wins one fight over here for Invicta, and she calls out everybody in the weight class. And you know, it's kind of a bad situation for her because she ran right to the top and got beat up, and now look at her. I haven't seen anything. What's she doing? Where's she at? She ain't on the map again, like, to fight anytime soon that I know of. So I think she just took too big of a step right there.
Were you disappointed that she missed weight and the fight became a non-title fight?
I think that it's different when you go from having that extra pound to not having that pound. That's a big difference, especially for these girls that are cutting so much weight. And don't get me wrong, I cut a lot of weight too, and it sucks. It really does suck. But that extra pound does a lot of mental damage on you. And if you're cutting to make 136 the whole time and you're barely making it, and sometimes these girls aren't even making it. I don't know if you saw the last Invicta. Colleen didn't make 136.
Right.
The Aldana didn't make 136. It's hard to watch, but in my weight class you got to make 135, and it's a little bit tougher. But I don't think that a lot of these folks are like taking the weight cut serious, and they're not respecting the sport. Miss weight like that. Although, I can say the same thing. I never missed weight in my life until that fight with Cyborg, whatever her name is. That was the first time I've ever missed weight, and there's just a lot of things that came into play, and I do understand it, and I think it is harder for the girls to make weight. But that's where you got to know what weight class you got to be in. And obviously that's where I'm at right now. The weight cuts are really hard for me, and so I'm just getting older and learning about a lot of things that I need to do to make it easier on myself, and I'm looking at it with a different perspective instead of cutting all this weight last minute and then putting it all back on and being heavy. I'm trying to be healthy about it, and I'm really motivated at getting down there and making things easier for myself. So, it just comes with the game, and I just got to accept it and take it into my own hands and do what I need to do, and run from there.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that goes along with experience, because sometimes the more experienced fighters are missing weight as well, but I see a lot more at the amateur level where the fighters are missing weight, and it can become dangerous, which is the scary thing about it. That's the most important thing that new fighters, I think, need to realize, that weight cutting is not something you take lightly. It's a serious issue.
Right.
Now, the last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were planning on staying with Invicta. Is that still true?
That is true. Obviously, I'm a free agent right now. I haven't got my multi-fight deal from Invicta yet, but I did have talks with Shannon, and I did agree to it. And obviously, I'll stick by my word like I always do. And I'm excited to sign with them again, and I'm excited to fight for them again. And I'm really loyal to them. I feel like they've been really loyal to me, and I'm really loyal to them. And I'm happy where I'm at, and I'm getting as many fights as I could get. Obviously, the weight class, it's hard to compete with UFC when they're signing everybody under the moon. I mean, they're signing girls that haven't fought in Invicta, haven't done anything in the sport, and they're getting signed with UFC. And congratulations, you're a UFC fighter sitting on the bench for over a year, sometimes 2 years, doing nothing. But I guess you could put on your profile that you're a UFC fighter if that's all that matters. But at the end of the day, that ain't what matters to me. I want to fight, and I want to make as much money as I can in this sport before my time's up. So, these girls are sitting there and with that label over their head, and they're just wasting years, wasting time, so it's not interesting for me. Doesn't float my boat, that's for sure.
But at one point, I know there was talk about you doing a super fight with Cyborg. So that might be off if you stay with Invicta then, right? Or
well,
no?
I mean, realistically, Cyborg's been signed with UFC this whole time. So UFC pays her bill when she fights for Invicta. It's a little weird how it works, but I guess UFC has a pull in most things MMA. So, I did agree. I've agreed a couple of times, but I think what it comes down to is does Invicta want to take that step to let their champion go up a little bit to fight the UFC, I guess, / Invicta champion, and I want UFC to pay that bill. I don't want to be making a tenth of what she's making just because UFC's paying her bill. If that's a super fight, I feel like UFC should pay the bill. And I understand that Invicta's a working promotion, and they're doing great things for a lot of girls out there, and bringing girls in, building them up, giving them exposure, giving them a place to fight, giving them jobs. But when it all comes down to it, nobody has more money than UFC. So, if they really want to see that fight, I guess they'll pay me for it. So, just leave it at that.
Well, I know the fans would be looking forward to that fight. I think it would be amazing. Before we go today, Tonya, anything else you would like to add?
No, I just give a shout out to some of my sponsors, and obviously on my social media, everybody get on there and check out my sponsors and stuff. But I got some amazing sponsors this time, and some guys that stuck with me and stuff, and I just want to give them a shout out. So that's all right.
Give us your social media digits, the best ones to people to follow you at, because I know there's a lot of channels out there, and you can't be on all of them. So which is the best one to follow you at?
I'm not the social media queen, but I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, just under my name. It ain't hard to find me.
Tonya Triple Threat Evinger, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and I wish you good luck on your fight against Colleen Schneider at Invicta FC 17 on May 7th.